Hi, I'm Danielle Paige, and I'm the author of Dorothy Must Die, or the Dorothy Must Die series. Oops, wrong way. Here we go. And I am so excited to be here. I am such a big fan of Oz, and I am just so glad to be part of the Oz community. It means so much to me to have my books accepted by you guys. And so the first time I read Wizard of Oz was when I was 5, I think, and it was after seeing the movie. My mom gave me the books. I was so in love with both, and I never thought I would end up writing an Oz story, but I was obsessed with it. I became a soap writer first. I wrote for Days of Our Lives and Guiding Light, which was such a joy and such a great way to learn how to write. I am such a fan of soaps. Anyway, I'm so happy to be here again, and my story, actually, if you aren't familiar with it, is about Amy Gum. She's another girl who lands in Oz and finds it very much changed from the books and the movies, and she finds that Dorothy is now very, very wicked, and so are her friends, and she joins a group of revolutionary witches who want to fight Dorothy, hence the title. And a lot of things happen. It's 4 books, and I hope you get a chance to read them. The idea came from wondering what would happen to Dorothy when she first gets back to Kansas. Wouldn't she miss agency and magic and her friends? And what if she got a little bit petulant, a little bit wicked, and her friends came along with her? So that's where it came from. And I was really interested in exploring the power dynamic. Like, what do these characters that we love who finally have the things that they want, how do they behave? So the Tin Man has his heart, but what if he is now obsessively in love with Dorothy? And the Lion has his courage, but what if he now eats fear? And the Scarecrow has his brains, but what if he's now a little bit of a mad scientist? And at the same time, Dorothy finally, the one thing that she wants is not to go home. So it's just, she had, like, what do you do when you get the thing that you want, basically? So I'm going to take a few minutes and read a few chapters, just a little snippet of the first few chapters. This is chapter 1. And this is Amy at home in her trailer. I first discovered I was trashed 3 days before my 9th birthday, 1 year after my father lost his job and moved to Secaucus to live with a woman named Crystal, and 4 years before my mother had the car accident, started taking pills, and began exclusively wearing bedroom slippers instead of normal shoes. I was informed of my trashiness on the playground by Madison Pendleton, a girl in a pink Target sweatsuit who thought she was all that because her house had 1.5 bathrooms. Salvation Amy's trailer trash, she told the other girls on the monkey bars while I was dangling upside down by my knees and minding my own business, my pigtails scraping the sand. That means she doesn't have any money and all her clothes are dirty. You shouldn't go to her birthday party or you'll be dirty too. When my birthday party rolled around that weekend, it turned out everyone had listened to Madison. My mom and I were sitting at the picnic table in the Dusty Acres Mobile Community Recreation Area, wearing out our sad little party hats, our sheet cake gathering dust. It was just the two of us, just as the same as always. After an hour of hoping someone would finally show up, Mom sighed, poured me another big cup of Sprite, and gave me a hug. She told me that whatever anyone said at school, a trailer was where I lived, not who I was. She told me that it was the best home in the world because it could go anywhere. Even as a little kid, I was smart enough to point out that our house was on blocks, not wheels. Its mobility was severely oversold. Mom didn't have much of a comeback for that. It took her until around Christmas time of that year when we were watching The Wizard of Oz on the big flat screen television. The only physical thing that was left over from her old life was Dad, with Dad, to come up with a better answer for me. See, she said, pointing at the screen, you don't need wheels on your house to get somewhere better. All you need is something to give you that extra push. I don't think she believed it even then, but at least in those days she still cared enough to lie. And even though I never believed in a place like Oz, I did believe in her. So we're going to skip ahead to chapter 3, when she lands in Oz. When I came to, the first thing I saw was the spongy gray floor of the trailer above me. Star was scampering around my achy body like it was a racetrack, trying frantically to wake me up. It took me a second to realize that I was lying on the ceiling. Light streaked through the dirty windows, normal, bright, white light again, not the blushy pink I had seen during the tornado or the watercolor brown just before it. I was alive and someone was talking to me, grabbed my hand, just lightly. I turned my head and looked up to see a torso leaning in through the open door, half in, half out, and an arm reaching for me. It was a he, silhouetted by a light pouring in from behind. I couldn't make out his face. Who are you? Just take my hand, he asked. Try not to make any sudden movement. From my side, stars squeaked and scrambled into the pocket of my hoodie. Stars, her mom's pet rat. I rose slowly to my feet and dusted myself off. Nothing seemed to be broken, but everything hurt like I was a rag doll that'd been thrown around in a giant tin can. When I took a step, the double-wide lurched beneath me. I rolled back on my heels, trying to get my balance, and it rocked with even more menace. I stopped. Just 2 steps and you're home. Hurry, he said. The distance between his hand and me seemed farther than 2 steps. I wanted to move again, but I didn't. It's okay. Don't panic. Just move. I took another step, careful not to upset the equilibrium, then another. I put my hand in his. As my skin touched his, I saw his face and I felt electricity shooting through my body. His eyes were the first thing I noticed. They were emerald green, the flecks of something I couldn't even describe to myself, and they seemed to be glowing, almost floating in front of his face. Was he a rescue worker? And if so, how far was I from home? Exactly. Am I dead? I asked. It certainly seemed possible. Likely even. It was hard to believe that I had survived any crash. Of course not. If you were dead, would we be having this conversation? With that, he gave my arm a sharp, strong yank and pulled me through the doorway. We fell backward, tumbling onto the ground outside. I scrambled quickly to my feet and turned around to see I was standing on the edge of a deep ravine. My poor little trailer was barely holding on, teetering on the precipice. With that, I whispered, my trailer heaved, and then with a final aching creak, it lurched backward, letting go. No, I screamed, but it was too late. I kept expecting to see it crash and shatter in a million pieces, but it kept falling as I stood there watching it disappear into the abyss. It was gone with not even a sound. I had almost gone with it. Everything I owned was in there, every piece of ugly clothing, every bad memory. I was free of it all. I'm sorry about your house, my rescuer said. His voice was soft, but it startled me anyway. I jumped and looked up to find that he was standing at my side. It's a miracle you made it out. A few inches to the left and you'd have gone straight to the pit. Lucky, I guess. The way you said it made it sound like you thought it had been something more than luck. I guess they didn't have trailers where he was from, lucky him. I realized, looking around for the first time, that we weren't in Dusty Acres anymore, but where were we? On the side of the pit on which I stood, a vast field of decaying grass stretched into the distance. It was gray and patchy and sickly with the faintest tinge of blue. On the far side of the pit was a dark, sinister-looking black forest. Everything around here would seem to have that tint to it, actually. The air, the clouds, even the sun, which was shining bright, all had faded, washed out quality to them. There was something dead about all of it. When I looked closely, I saw the tiny blue dust particles were floating everywhere, like the wispy floating petals of a dandelion, except they were glittering, giving everything a glowing, unreal feeling. But not everything was blue. Underneath the boy's feet, yellow bricks, as vivid as a box of new crayons, were almost glowing in the stark contrast to the blown-out, post-apocalyptic monochrome of the landscape. The golden path led all the way up the ravine and then dropped off into nothingness. In the other direction, it wound its way through the field and spiraled off into the horizon. It was a road. You've got to be kidding me. I was so astonished that I wasn't even sure I had said it out loud. I'd been dropped here by a tornado, and now I was standing on something that looked remarkably like a road over yellow bricks. This had to be some mix-up. Maybe Kansas had finally crashed, and on the whole Dorothy thing, and with the theme park and the tornado, it just happened to drop me there. In which case, this guy was just a really hot park guide. I stared at him, waiting for him to explain. Welcome to Oz, the boy said, nodding like he expected. I'd figured it out already. It came out sounding almost apologetic. Hate to break the bad news. Oz. I touched my head looking for a bump or something. I must have gotten knocked out and was having a particularly crazy hallucination. At that, I let out a hoot of laughter. Good. With the way things had been lately, I figured I could use a fantastical hallucination about now. It seemed like it had done Dorothy some good in the movie, and in Dorothy's fantasy, she'd been greeted by a bunch of munchkins. A beautiful boy beat that any day. Aren't you supposed to be bow down for me or something? I asked, still laughing. Instead of laughing along with me, concern washed over the boy's face, like he was worried I was going a little bit crazy. Was I crazy? My head swimming? If this was a fantasy, it was a strange one. This wasn't the Oz that I had read about or seen in the movie. If it was as if someone had drained out some of the technicolor and introduced some serious darkness. Where were the good witches, the fields of enormous poppies? Where were the jolly munchkins? I guess even in my concussion-induced fantasies, I'm not creative or cheerful enough to come up with all that. Instead, I conjured up something that looked suspiciously like dusty acres right after a nuclear explosion. I spun around to take it all in a little too quickly in my excitement and began to wobble up the edge of the cliff. My rescuer was there with a hand on my wrist, pulling me onto the brick road just in time to save me yet again from plunging to my death. It took me a second, but I recovered my balance and stepped forward, getting my bearings. As I set one foot and then another onto the road, the bricks themselves seemed to almost pulse under me, like there was a current running through them. It feels like something's under there, I said, looking down at my sneakers. The road wants you to go to the city. The road wants me? I rubbed my head in confusion. It wants everyone. That's what it's there for. The road's been here longer than any of us. There's a deep magic in there, magic even she doesn't understand. Some people think that it has a mind of its own. It wants you to go to the city, but it doesn't like to make the trip easy. It figured nothing was ever easy in my experience. Who's she? The boy reached out and tugged a lock of my hair. The way he did it, it wasn't romantic, but more curious, really. It was tender, too, but it was a kind of sad tenderness. No one ever touched me anyway, and I flinched automatically. There's so much you don't know, so much you have to learn. I wish you didn't. Learn what? I wanted to ask, or maybe I didn't want to know. Then I felt a wriggling at my hip and looked down to see that Star was poking her head out of the pocket of my hoodie, was sniffing at the air, looking just as confused as I felt. I pulled her out and placed her on the bricks, and she jolted. I guess the road had given her the same feeling it had given me. Easy, girl. You'll get used to it in a second. I looked back up at the boy. If this is Oz, I trailed off, searching for the question that was on the tip of my tongue. Then I found it. What happened here? I was waiting for him to answer when out of nowhere a look of panic crossed his face. For a moment he looked disoriented, like he'd forgotten who he was. Something around the edges of his body seemed to flicker. Are you okay? I asked, but he didn't answer. He hadn't moved. Now he seemed to be looking right through me. I reached out and touched him on the shoulder. I have to go. Go. I didn't understand. He just got here. I just got here. What the hell was happening? Where are you going? He shook his head. Sorry, it's getting late. I've never left for this long. I have to get back before. Don't, I said, maybe a little too desperately. Maybe this was a dream, or maybe it wasn't, but either way, I didn't want to be left here, in the middle of nowhere, all alone. Before what? What are you talking about? Who are you? I'm no one, he said, turning away and walking toward the pit. Please, I begged. He turned back to me one more time. This is where it all began, you know. I don't know why you're here, or who brought you, pink hair, but if you're here, it means it's all beginning for you, too. You're like her in so many ways, but I can tell you're different. I can't help you. I'm not powerful enough, but I can help you help yourself. But you can help yourself. Prove me right. Don't make the same mistake she made. But be brave, he said. Be angry. Don't trust anyone. I'll see you soon. He stepped to the edge of the road to right where the bricks crumbled away into the black. Then he jumped. No, I screamed, lunging forward, catching myself in time before I followed him. Below me, the darkness looked relentless and unforgiving. The road wanted something, he had told me, and now I knew the pit did too. It was hungry, it was already infinite, and it still wanted more. There was no sign of him. The boy was gone. I looked down at Star, who was perched at her haunches on my feet. So what do we do now? I asked, half expecting her to say something back. She didn't need to. I knew the answer already. What I was going to do next was the same thing I've been doing all my life. I turned back, just put one foot in front of the other. Nothing had changed except for the color of the road. So we begin. So I hope that you check out my books, and it is such a pleasure to be here. And I hope that you have a fun rest of your fest. Bye.